Number 21. Reports of Brigadier General N. G. Evans, C.S. Army, with correspondence. Headquarters 7th Brigade. During Sunday the enemy kept a deliberate fire without any effect. Early on Monday morning, the 21st instant, I heard the firing of my pickets at Big Spring, who had discovered that at an unguarded point the enemy had effected a crossing in force of 5 companies and were advancing on Leesburg. Captain William L. Duff, of the 17th Regiment, immediately attacked him, driving him back, with several killed and wounded. On observing the movements of the enemy from Fort Evans at 6 o'clock a.m., I found they had effected a crossing both at Edwards Ferry and Bluff, and I made preparations to meet him in both positions, and immediately ordered 4 companies of infantry, 2 of the 18th, 1 of the 17th, and 1 of the 13th, and a cavalry force to relieve Captain Duff. The whole force, under the immediate command of Lieutenant Colonel W. H. Jennifer, who was directed to hold his position till the enemy made further demonstration of his design of attack. This force soon became warmly engaged with the enemy, and drove them back for some distance in the woods. At about 10 o'clock I became convinced that the main point of attack would be at Bluff, and ordered Colonel Hunton, with his regiment, the 8th Virginia Volunteers, to repair immediately to the battle immediately in the rear of Colonel Jennifer's command and to drive the enemy to the river, that I would support his right with our artillery. About 12:20 o'clock p.m. Colonel Hunton united his command with that of Colonel Jennifer, and both commands soon became hotly engaged with the enemy in their strong position in the woods. Watching carefully the action, I saw the enemy were constantly being reinforced, and at 2:30 o'clock p.m. ordered Colonel Burt to march his regiment, the 18th Mississippi, and attack the left flank of the enemy concealed in a ravine, and was compelled to divide his regiment to stop the flank movement of the enemy. At this time, about 3 o'clock, finding the enemy were in large force, I ordered Colonel Featherston, with his regiment, the 17th Mississippi, to repair at double quick to the support of Colonel Burt, where he arrived in 20 minutes, and the action became general along my whole line, and was very hot and brisk for more than 2 hours, the enemy keeping up a constant fire with his batteries on both sides of the river. At about 6 o'clock p.m. I saw that my command had driven the enemy near the banks of the Potomac. I ordered my entire force to charge and to drive him into the river. The charge was immediately made by the whole command, and the forces of the enemy were completely routed, and cried out for quarter along his whole line. In this charge the enemy were driven back at the point of the bayonet, and many killed and wounded by this formidable weapon. In the precipitate retreat of the enemy on the bluffs of the river many of his troops rushed into the water and were drowned, while many others, in overloading the boats, sunk them, and shared the same fate. The rout now, about 7 o'clock, became, and the enemy commenced throwing his arms into the river. During this action I held Colonel William Barksdale, with 9 companies of his regiment, the 13th Mississippi, and 6 pieces of artillery, as a reserve, as well as to keep up a demonstration against the force of the enemy at Edwards Ferry. At 8 o'clock p.m. the enemy surrendered his forces at Ball's Bluff, and the prisoners were marched to Leesburg.